Hey guys, my name is Vincent, and believe it or not, there's a ghost haunting me. I don't even know when it all started, but I know that she only appears in the winter in the middle of the snowfall. At the beginning she looked at me from far away, but each time she started to come closer and closer. Sometimes I didn't even see her, but I knew she was there. I felt her icy gaze on my back, stalking me, chasing me wherever I went, until one day she caught me. This winter started like any other. I started to feel the cold and it put me in a very bad mood. I lived alone in my house, and since it was a family house in the south of the city, there were blocks and blocks of differences between my neighbors. I wanted to spend the first weekend of winter watching TV with the fireplace heating the whole room, but I couldn't even do that as the power went out as soon as it got dark. I went outside to check my generator and it was broken. I would have to fix it in the morning as we were in the middle of the heavy snowfall. I returned home disappointed and angry, but all those feelings turned into pure terror and panic when I set foot in my dining room. In my house, there were white footprints leading to the kitchen, but not just any footprints. There were the footprints of small bare feet that looked like a woman's feet. Normally I would have been confused, but in the middle of winter, in the middle of a snowfall, I knew what this meant. The spirit that haunts me every winter, that appears in every snowfall, was haunting me again. I walked slowly towards the kitchen. Although there was no light, the fire in the fireplace illuminated the house a little. Anxiety got the better of me and I stopped walking, ran desperately to the kitchen door and closed it. With any luck, that spirit might stay in the kitchen and not try to hurt me. Suddenly I began to feel very cold in my body. A horrible headache began to take hold of me. It was as if I had eaten ice, but much more intense. I ducked my head and grabbed it with everything, but when I opened my eyes I noticed something new. The footprints were no longer heading toward the kitchen. They were heading in my direction and ended up in front of me.
Vincent!
I fell down from fear, and when I looked back, there was no one there. I decided to make a run through the darkness toward the exit door, but halfway there, I felt someone grab me by the hair and started dragging me running through the house. Every time I wanted to recover and run towards the door, that thing threw me against the wall away from it. The spirit became enraged and grabbed me by the hair and threw me violently against the glass of the exit, which I broke as if it were paper. I was in a lot of pain, but this was my chance to escape. I ran through the snow, getting lost in the snow. Behind me I heard a desperate scream.
Vincent!
My body felt cold. I couldn't breathe. I felt numb. I think I was dying. I was too cold. Every joint in my body was numb. I started to get very sleepy, until I just fell asleep. I opened my eyes. I couldn't believe I was still alive. I wasn't cold. I was in a white t-shirt in a doctor's office, waiting for a doctor. Suddenly a man in a white coat walked in. Vincent, it looks like you had another episode. What do you mean? Who are you? It's pity. All the progress we have made with you, we're going to lose it all at once. Progress? What are you talking about? Where am I? Vincent, I know everything you're going to tell me, so I'll be straight with you. There is no spirit chasing you. It's not winter. You've been in a mental institution for over 15 years when you proved you couldn't live on your own and you couldn't stay in the orphanage. Orphanage? Vincent, that woman you think is attacking you is your mother. You had violence problems as a child. You tried to escape in the middle of snowfall and your mother grabbed you by the hair and locked you in your room. My head hurts. I don't want to think about this. Exactly, Vincent. Your brain refuses to remember that traumatic experience. But you have to, in order to have a normal life. You're not in your mother's house. It's not winter and it's not snowing. Nobody is going to hurt you. Oh no. Uh... My name is Rose, and although I am now a self-defense teacher, I wasn't always a woman who could protect herself on her own. As much as I hate to admit it, what made me learn to do what I do was a winter day. The day I couldn't defend myself against the wrong person. It almost cost me my life. The day was very cold. It was the middle of winter. My husband was working out of town, so I was going to be alone all night. I was lying on a couch watching TV until something caught my attention. Every time I changed the channel, the screen would go black for a second, and in that second I saw the reflection of someone looking in my direction from the window. I started to change the channel very quickly to make sure that what I was seeing was correct, and to my shock, not only did I see a silhouette, but it was moving. Terrified, I got up from the couch and looked behind me, but there was no one there. Just in case, I stood up and locked all the doors. I also locked the windows and decided to go to my room and watch TV there. If someone wanted to come in, I was sure they would hear it. What I didn't know was that I was locking myself in with someone who was already inside my house. I went to my room and turned on the TV, and just in case, I locked the door. If anything happened, I had the phone to call the police. I turned on the TV and relaxed in bed, but suddenly, I began to hear a strange noise coming from behind the door. It was like banging. No one was trying to get in, but there was definitely something behind the door banging. I looked through the hole in the door, but no one was there. At that moment, the noise came again, and I realized that the noise was not coming from behind the door, but from behind the closet next to the door. Slowly, I began to walk back toward the phone. When I picked it up, the line was cut. Someone had cut the cord. Immediately, the closet door flew open. My cell phone was on the bed. I had to grab it. I slowly walked towards it, and when I raised my hand to grab it, I heard the voice. "You smell nice." Standing in front of me was a 6-foot-tall man. He was extremely skinny, but his huge body made this mean nothing. The man looked like a monster. "Who are you? What are you doing in my house?" "I'm sorry. I came into your house because it's so cold outside. I hate winter. Maybe I could crawl into bed with you. It's so cold. I just want to cover up. Get out of here. I'll call the police." Suddenly, the man threw himself on top of me. I didn't have time to defend myself. The cell phone was down and I couldn't reach it. I was at the mercy of this psychopath. "You smell so good. I love your smell. You know I'm cold and you're very hot. Must be your skin. Do you mind if I take it? Let go now." Without paying attention to me, the psycho started to pull my skin. He was trying to rip it off. The pain was too much. I felt like this psycho could slit my throat at any moment, and there was nothing I could do about it. When the pain was already unbearable, I noticed how the psychopath brought his fingers too close to my mouth, and I took advantage of this situation. I beat his fingers and made him scream. I managed to free myself and ran to the door, but it was locked. He was already recovering. I had to think fast. In desperation, I threw myself out of the window and broke it, and fell through the first floor into the freezing pool. At first, I felt like I was drowning. I overcame the cold and managed to swim up. With great difficulty breathing, I raised my head and saw how from the window the psychopath was looking at me with hatred and fear of diving. I ran as fast as I could in my pajamas in the cold. I went to a neighbor's house And when we called the police and they arrived, they found a psycho happily watching TV from my bed. Soon after, I found out that this man escaped from a psychiatric hospital. I still have nightmares of him ripping my skin off. That day I learned that you never know what life may throw at you, so you have to be prepared for anything. Have you ever gone hiking in the snow? If you have, I doubt you've experienced what I and my friends have. It started out as a joke, but the joke quickly got out of control, and without realizing it, we opened the door to something out of our imagination, a being we never thought we would encounter even in our worst nightmare. The school trip was going to be relatively boring, but my friends and I wanted to make it special. We wanted to have fun. After listening to the teacher's boring horror stories in the cabin, we pretended to be asleep, and once night fell, my two friends and I bundled up and escaped into the woods. We were a little cold, but the adventure was fun, or at least it was until we heard a noise coming from behind us. Something was following us. The frosty leaves broke with every step our pursuer took. We just stood there, waiting, praying that it was an act of our imagination. But it was not. Out of behind us came our teacher, and he was furious. He started yelling at us for running away. He told us that we were in a big trouble and that the trip was over for us. The three of us climbed up and were ready to go back with our heads down. But suddenly our sadness turned into absolute terror. A shadow stepped out from behind the professor. It was a giant being covered in ice. We tried to warn him, but the three of us were too terrified to speak. We simply could not believe what we were seeing. When we were finally able to react and scream in terror, it was too late. The giant grabbed the professor by the neck and carried him off into the woods. None of us could believe what we were seeing, but we all concluded to run back to the cabin. We ran as desperately as we could, but in a matter of seconds something stopped us. It was the dead body of the professor. Behind him, the horrible beast came out again and looked at us, indicating that now it was our turn. We ran through the frozen forest as fast as we could. The snow was really slowing us down, and the cold was starting to get the worst of us. My two friends managed to climb a tree, but when I jumped to grab a branch, I tripped and fell, so I kept running. My run didn't last much longer because when I turned around, I saw how the huge creature was trying to reach the tree where my friends were crying, waiting for their fate. I grabbed some stones and threw them at him to attract his attention, and this proved to be very effective, because with a look full of hate and violence, the monster came toward me at great speed. I kept running, but because I was looking back, I didn't realize that I was in front of a slope, and I fell awkwardly, breaking my ankle in the progress. When I was at the bottom, the huge being came down in a matter of seconds and, like a predator catching its prey, began to search for me. I slowly crawled into a small cave ahead of me, and with my eyes closed, I prayed that it would not find me. The night passed, and the being did not give up its search. I was getting sleepier and sleepier, but I knew it wasn't because I hadn't slept much, but because my body was almost frozen. Tired, I just closed my eyes. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a hospital. That day I almost died of hypothermia, but my friends saw me in the cave and knew I was there, so they alerted the whole hut immediately. They could never find the terrible monster or the body of the professor. We could never prove that what happened to us was true. But from what many people in the area said, they believed us. Despite this, the story was only in some local media, and to the internet world, this was just another story of the abominable snowman. Thank you for listening to our story. We hope it gave you a good scare. If you like it, please like, share and subscribe to our channel for more spooky stories.